What if the key to fixing our food system started beneath our feet? That's the question Dr. Jill Clapperton has been asking and answering for decades. Her work is all about exploring and sharing the art and science behind healthier soil and a better food system. Welcome to the Jill Clapperton Podcast, formerly known as Tasting Terroir, now expanded and more grounded than ever. Hosted by internationally respected soil scientist Dr. Jill Clapperton and co-host Sarah Harper, this podcast features real conversations with regenerative farmers, scientists, and artisan food makers who are redefining what's possible in agriculture and proving that change starts with the soil. It's part of a larger mission at Regenerative, Jill's company dedicated to improving soil health, crop quality, and human nutrition. And now we're bringing all of it, podcast episodes, soil science clips, expert interviews, and more to our new YouTube home, youtube.com/Jill Clapperton Soil Health. So if you're passionate about regenerative farming, nutrient-dense food, or just want to understand what really makes soil and our food system come alive, you're in the right place. Subscribe, listen, and grow with us.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Jill Clapperton Podcast. And, well, you guessed it, I'm Jill Clapperton. For the last 20 years, I've worked as an independent or freelance scientist, using my knowledge and my expertise to help farmers all over the world create healthy, productive soils that grow nutritious food in a way that regenerates and honors the integrity of the environment. Please join me as I introduce you to some of the people I've worked with and the people I know that are stewarding the land and growing nutritious food for us all in their own quiet and dedicated way. Let's call them our brightest food stars. From time to time, I'm also going to indulge my scientific curiosity, and yours too, I hope, to share some of the interesting research, both old and new, on soils, plants, agri-ecosystem practices, and that will include livestock grazing and food. And as always, my goal is for everyone to be making informed decisions based on science. And with that, let's get on to our first podcast.
Thanks, Jill, and hello to everyone listening. I'm Sarah Harper, your co-host for this podcast and executive producer of content for Regenerative. I've had the privilege of working alongside Jill for many years and within the regenerative agriculture space for nearly 2 decades. And I'm excited to help bring you deeper into the science, the stories, and the people behind regenerative agriculture. To kick off this new season, we thought there was no better place to start than with a question Jill gets asked very often. What is regenerative agriculture? It's a question without a single answer, and all too often, the people with the deepest hands-on knowledge aren't the ones shaping the public conversation, and not the marketing either. That's why we wanted to ground this episode in lived experience by hearing what regeneration means to the people actually doing it on the ground. So before we turn to some of those brightest food stars Jill mentioned, Jill and I sat down to talk through how she defines regeneration and why it's not a fixed idea, but something that continues to evolve through observation, science, and experience. Let's get into it.
You know, Sarah, the reason that I thought about this for this discussion was because there's a lot of people claiming they're regenerative, and it's like, well, are they not? The question comes up, like, I'm doing all these regenerative practice and they only do that. How can they call themselves regenerative when I'm doing so much more? I think for me, one of the things is if somebody is taking steps. Now, you may have taken a lot of steps years ago and then just kept moving on. But if your neighbor's taking 2 or 3 steps forward and getting there, then be supportive instead of going, well, you're not doing enough. Everybody needs to do what they need to do. And, the way I regenerate a system is going to be different from somebody else's. And the number of steps that I can take right away is going to be different because I probably have a higher tolerance for the change that somebody else might not have the same tolerance for. But I think the whole thing is about rebuilding. or restoring of a system of something, but not restoring it and just back to its good old self. Because that's where this whole term of regenerative came from was, well, why are we sustaining a broken system? We need to regenerate the broken system. Well, do we need to, and if we regenerate it, do we regenerate it to the same spot? Or do we actually, disturb everything and reconfigure it and then have it growing even more? So I think the whole idea needs to be that when you regenerate something, you are evolving the system and not devolving it. So in other words, you're helping it come together, you're helping it adapt, you're making it more resilient and more resistant and all these things, and you're not taking it to pieces. We've got to a point with maybe what we'll call a conventional agricultural system, and they want to change. It's about taking steps where you're actually nurturing the land instead of always destroying it. So if you think about it, I think Gabe Brown said this best one time. He said, every morning I would wake up, and Gail Fuller said this too. Every morning I would wake up and I would think about what am I going to kill during the growing season. I mean, you want to stop that. That even just stopping thinking that is regenerative. Just pulling out the nitrogen IV and and not being addicted to nitrogen anymore, and then thinking about, well, when do I really need nitrogen, and makes you more regenerative. And let's think about that. You're more regenerative because now you're regenerating economy. Now I'm lowering my costs of production. I'm putting more money in my pocket. Maybe that means the family and I can go on a nice vacation or something, or I can get something else. I mean, that's regenerative too. Regenerating rural economy, being able to put in a small scale packing house or a mobile slaughter facility. So somebody has a job, somebody in your community or some family in your community has a job. That's regenerative as well. But I think regenerative is this whole system. It's not one thing. It's not taking a step. It's not prescriptive. And that's the one reason this term came up, I think, was because nobody wanted to be prescribed that this is the only way you can be sustainable. This is the only way you can be regenerative. The idea is that it's not prescriptive at all. It's very authentic. It's very grassroots. I'm doing all these things to benefit the environment, to benefit my community, to benefit myself, to benefit the climate. And I'm going forward. I'm regenerating a better system. And your system may look totally different from mine, but mine might be fully regenerated too.
Yeah.
And we can think of it a bit like fire in the ecosystem, and how like the Aboriginal people used to set fire to things when things got so that they didn't have any more food anymore because they were in a climax situation. So they set fire to it all so that everything would be green and lush and again. They were regenerating the system. And I think you can think about it that way too, that it's a disturbance. If a grassland is static and everything is old and they're all overgrown, then putting animals in there or lighting a match or something like that is going to regenerate the system and make it productive again.
How do you get around that human tendency to want to put a box around it though? Because that keeps coming up over and over. Even though people say they know it's a mindset and they know but they still are doing it. They still are doing it.
Well, yeah, they're still doing it because we can profit from it in some way, right? Like if I put a stamp on it, then you know that I've agreed that this is regenerative. But then that's my definition of regenerative. And in the end, it's about supporting agriculture, supporting farmers that are rebuilding the ecosystem. We want to put a box around it because then it says that I'm better than them.
Yeah.
Or that I can aspire to them because they're better than me. Instead, let's just make it transparent. If you're being regenerative, then what are you doing that's regenerative? Why don't you just tell me? What are you doing? Are you just stopping the use of pesticides? Well, okay, maybe you could go further. But if I'm the consumer, I have a choice then. I'm like, well, this person here has stopped pesticides and stopped doing this and has shown that their water is clean and they have no more nitrates in it. Well, I'm going to buy from them because their produce is the same price as this other one and they're not doing nearly as much. Because it's the same with the organic certification. It's a certification. It says that you made this level.
And when we were certifying, when we were creating a national standard in Canada for organics, we had the same thing. It was like, but I'm certified in this agency and we do so much more. Why don't you want to set to our standard? And it was like, we have to set a baseline level that nobody goes below. But after that, if you want to be better than somebody else, that's up to you. When we set this level, then that was all.
Right.
It's like, I can live up to your expectations or I can step down to your expectations.
Yeah.
And everybody's going to have slightly different expectations.
It's almost like I would like to see it as a way to help consumers understand it, regenerative displayed as like a path, because it is this journey that never ends, as opposed to like a done list of practices that you've now completed, but like a path that maybe it flowers out all over the place. And then people could like color in the parts that they've done.
I like it. And that's the whole idea of transparency,
Right.
is where are you on this scale? Do you have clean water? Have you checked? Do you have pesticides on your food? Where's your pesticide test? We're always guarding against the minority. And this is about majority of people. And you're going to have a different regenerate. And I think that's the point of this whole series, is your regenerative is going to be different from my regenerative, which is going to be different from somebody else's regenerative. And that's the whole point, is to show that there's this really broad definition of what this is. But I think everybody will agree, we know what it is not.
Yeah.
We know that it is not about polluting the environment. We know that it is not about coating this food with pesticides. We know that it is growing things in a way that keeps our soil healthy. So that's part of what regenerative is. And regenerative is a system. I think the other thing is that when we do the box, everything is dissected.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I'm a scientist. Everything is reduction. Like, well, what are the parts that make the whole?
Yeah.
Well, let's just have the whole and accept that the whole this is the whole. And then in the next 2 years, this will be the whole. And then the next few years, this will be the whole.
Really, the only way you're going to understand the regenerative nature or story is if the brand they're working with knows the farmers that they're working with, because just accumulating a set of practices and giving a lump amount of data, it's better than nothing. But in terms of really understanding the context of what happened and what's the change over their baseline, how are they improving on that same spot year after year over 10 years? You can't get any of that if you don't know where the supply is coming from. So it maybe is a pointer back to the importance of knowing the farmer, which I know everybody wants, all the consumers say they want, but that would require a real change in the system that we have for sourcing ingredients.
Absolutely.
And maybe that's a way to think for the food system to think about regenerating itself, because there's a lot pushed on the farmers and there's a lot of responsibility there. They have, they're managing the basic resources. That's where all the impact is. But the food supply chain itself has a lot to answer for too. And maybe some of this thinking about journey and about change and disruption I'd like it if they'd think about it too.
So that brings up the next part, is like, let's not think about this just in terms of agriculture.
Right.
Yes, the food system should regenerate itself as well. Absolutely, it should be. And I think there's a number of brands that are trying to do that, but trying to work with farmers and know their farm, know where they're getting it from and things like that. I think they are. I think if anything that's happened with COVID, it's more people are doing things for themselves, like they're actually cooking. They're actually making things. They're trying to be a little bit more like their ancestors and actually putting food by. And some people are learning that for the first time in their lives, like how to can something. I think that this whole idea of regenerative, it's about doing things that are right for the ecosystem too, right for your community. We often ask ourselves, why is it so hard to be right? Why is it so hard to do something good? Sometimes it seems way easier to do something that's not nearly as good.
Yeah.
And I think part of that's because we legislate for the minority. We always legislate against things instead of for things. So let's think about regenerative as for agriculture, for the environment, for climate change, and that it's all about trying to regenerate a system where we don't have any of those problems. Now, we're going to have other problems. Absolutely, we are. But it's also about regenerating your health, regenerating the health of your animals.
That's the magic of regeneration, is that you realize how resilient a lot of these mediums are, whether it's the soil or ourselves, that if you put effort into it, these things can come back and they can thrive in a way that where they were depleted before.
Absolutely. Perfect example of regeneration was on this farm in South Africa where they got rid of all the invasive tree species, pines and eucalyptus, on the farm in a particular watershed area. And all of a sudden, it was a river, not a creek anymore.
Mm.
All of a sudden, the water cycle came again. That's regenerative. And yeah, it was destroying something else. But then, wait a minute, they had mobile pyrolysis. So they were making charcoal for the community out of the trees that they took out. Another regenerative thing. So you want to line them up. They're not just one thing. They're this system that is self-perpetuating, that thrives, that nourishes, that is nourishing and nurturing.
And I've heard you talk too about when you make some of these changes and then there's an exponential return sometimes. Like you may make a change here or there, and then it interacts with other things going on. And so the result is much bigger than the one small change you made that time.
Yeah. And I'll go back to that same example in South Africa. I mean, it went from a trickle of water to a raging river and a waterfall. And all the local communities got charcoal for a very long time for their fires and to cook with. So you have to ask yourself, what was the downside of taking out all those trees?
Yeah.
And people could say, well, they were fixing all this carbon, but they were also not allowing for the water to move in the way it should have in the first place. So this is where we have to find a balance. And it's always about a balance. And maybe we could even call it rebalancing, because maybe that's some of what we're doing is we're rebalancing everything.
Yeah.
We're finding a new balance.
The other thing that is fascinating to me, and I'd love you to share what you think about this, is hearing people like you talk about how plants actually talk to each other through their roots and through the chemicals there's this harmony, there's this harmonious world going on below the ground that we could learn a lot from in terms of restoring one to the other, because one gives something, the other needs it, and one needs something and it calls for the nutrients that it needs. And I mean, it's crazy if you don't know about it. What's going on down there is just amazing.
It is. I mean, I was talking with somebody about that today and saying, plants are really intelligent. I mean, everybody thinks that they're just sitting there passively kind of growing. They're not. They are defending and they're on offense, and they like corn and actually a number of plants. If an insect larva is nibbling on the roots, or an insect, are calling for insect parasitizing nematodes to come and get it. And they're sending out, volatile and chemical signals to deal with that, as well as armoring up and whatnot. And they're trying to create a supportive environment, and they're sharing that information with the entire plant community around them. So when one plant gets nibbled on, it sends off signals that all the other plants are like, oh, so-and-so's got, nibble, armor up. We need to take action. And they'll start sending out signals out through their roots too, because it's like, that is the signal for root feeder. Send out the anti-root feeder signal. This is a system too, and it's self-perpetuating as well. The system didn't need us. We need them.
Well, what's really striking to me is knowing farmers. Is you work with them for so many years, and I've had the joy to get to work with a lot of them. They're such independent people, which I admire, but that can also be isolating, and we can learn from the plants. I mean, they send out these signals and they respond together as a community. Maybe that's part of regeneration and rebalancing too.
It is. It's about rebuilding our community, rural development. I mean, think of how decimated our rural communities have become.
Yeah, it's an attitude of abundance, and that abundance brings more abundance, as opposed to it's a small pie and I have to get the majority of it.
Yeah, I have to take majority of it, so the rest of you go downhill. No, it's about, well, how about I help you up? And are there going to be people who are detractors? Absolutely, there are. There are always. But are they majority or are they the minority? probably they are the minority. So why are we so focused on the minority instead of the majority? We need to be focused on the people that are doing a great job of it. And we need to be propping them up, and we need to be helping the people who want help. One thing I would say that is true about everybody I know is they have field days on their farm because they want people to see what they're doing, and they want to share. They want to share what they're doing. Most of the farmers I know that are doing a great job of growing, that are really innovative, that are doing really well, will tell you anything you want to know. You just have to ask, and they'll share.
I'm going to ask you to fill in the sentence regenerative agriculture is in a couple of sentences.
Regenerative agriculture is about rehabilitation, restoring. And I mean, when I say restoring, I mean restoring system function. It's about aggregating, not splitting. It's about bringing people together. It's about bringing things together. It's about creating communities, thriving, vibrant communities. It's about diversity. And it's like cooking with gas, you know? Regenerative, you put the gas to it and it is bubbling in a really productive way. It's like a magnet. Everything is coming to it. And it's building from that magnetic force, and things are getting stuck to it. All sorts of different things are being stuck to it.
It's always powerful to hear this perspective from someone like Jill, a soil scientist who has spent decades not only studying the science, but also working directly with people putting it into practice, and putting it into practice herself as a farmer and farm consultant. Her ability to connect soil health, plant health, and food quality is what makes her insight so valuable and unique. But what makes this conversation even richer is hearing how others on the front lines of regenerative agriculture define the term for themselves. These are the farmers, chefs, and food researchers Jill has known and collaborated with for years. People who are living this work every day and shaping what regeneration looks like in their fields, kitchens, and communities. You can find links to everyone featured in this episode in our show notes, and if you'd like to connect directly to them, even buy products they've made, head on over to our website, risoterra.com/betterfood. Now, let's hear what regeneration means to them. All right, so Deanna, in one sentence or two, regenerative agriculture is
Better food for people and animals.
That's great.
And here's a million other things it does.
Right.
But
Right.
we are boiling it down to why it really matters. Why it really matters is because it offers better food for people and animals. And
I think the process of getting to that outcome is that you're rejuvenating the soil, and that then enables you to create a better product, right?
oh, absolutely. My t-shirt says soil will save us. And I 100% believe that. And if we can protect it, then we have a chance to do better and offer people better. You know, we don't need more of anything, just better. And I think that regenerative agriculture checks those boxes when we're talking about minimizing tillage, minimizing soil disturbance, minimizing your use of fertilizers, and reducing all of the chemicals and things like that. I think that they all check off boxes towards better food, right? And I think that's really the goal. I mean, we get to repair the earth, but the result is better food. Like that means.
So regenerative agriculture is,
For me, it's constant improvement, of soil and mindset and community and health and happiness, all of those things. I guess, and the outcome for us, one of the big ones is resilience. Like from the outside looking in, I guess that's.
And I totally agree. I guess that's where I tried to sum it all up into our little motto of loyal to the soil.
yeah, that's a
Because
great
look at,
motto.
everything we do, how does it affect the soil? And sometimes it's not maybe going to have a positive effect, but how can we have as little of a detrimental impact as possible so that we can be moving forward?
Something that really kind of struck this winter, I took a leadership course, which in itself was an amazing experience. But one of the things we talked about, because it's a lot of inward looking, but was like when we're looking at building and looking at measuring success and improvement, think about sheets of paper. I mean, that's kind of, is it better or worse? I mean, that's what we're, and same thing with the soil. I mean, it's not it doesn't do, if it does, good for you. If it's great. But for us year in and year out with the weather challenges we face, if we can be profitable and improve the resource in the same year, that's a win. Because I think what happens sometimes is profitability comes at the cost of the resource, and people will talk about it.
How would you complete the sentence? Regenerative agriculture is
a work in progress. I think that it needs much more widespread adoption, and I'll have some ideas on how we can bring that into being. But regenerative ag can solve two major problems. One is carbon. We raise venture capital. We talk to investors all the time, and I see the things that people are trying to get rid of carbon with, and they're not going to work, not in time. And farmers will change much faster than corporate middle managers, I'll be honest. But we still need to create the incentives and have the tool set to make it work and scale. That is really the big challenge right now, is making it scale and scale quickly in time to defeat this carbon problem.
And along with it, a lot of nutrition challenges, getting more nutrient density.
You're right.
Improving
That's a
the
really
soil
good
health.
point. And, and then I think the last piece of that, of course, is chemicals. If you scale it all and still people are getting Parkinson's all over the place, you haven't really achieved a lot. We're working on eliminating chemicals out of agriculture, and we're doing that three ways. One, my farm. Two, we have a regenerative supply chain with Candidate Pet Foods. And three, I have a robotics company that actually is the enabler to get chemicals out of regenerative ag. So those are three things. We're doing it here in Kansas.
Where regenerative is different from conventional and organic is it's about the outcomes. Growing up, we were on a conventional farm, and then in college, I was in environmental chemistry and learning about all the issues with herbicides and that type of thing. I ended up, me and my dad and my brother, we transitioned our farm to organic coming out of college. It was pretty good, and the premiums were good and stuff. The organic standards were a little bit frustrating for me, in that they weren't letting me build a better product. They were just limiting me on what I could do.
I think it's a really interesting point. We want standards, and standards are important. Definitions are important. If you don't have them, it's easy to have people kind of fool others about, say they're doing something that they're not. So that's certainly understandable why people would want standards. But the flip side that doesn't often get talked about is that standards, as I've heard from others in our community, standards can end up being like a lowest common denominator system, and a very, like you've just said, a restrictive system, because they have to test for certain points and only those points. So it can be very limiting in how you get to the outcome.
Like with organic, I didn't find that we were looking at outcomes. We were always just looking, well, what's going in? Well, we should limit these things that go in, but then we're also limiting some of these other beneficial things that we could put in. But if the certifier said, well, no, we don't really want those, well, then you just can't use them. I didn't feel we were getting to a point where we could produce the best product. And so that was just a frustration for me on that.
Regenerative agriculture is?
Regenerative agriculture is when you farm in ways that bring life back to the soil. If it's kind of short on life in the first place, or if you got pretty decent soil, your practices are just continually improving and replenishing that, so that biology is functioning normally, which is to say exactly how it's supposed to be functioning between the fungi, the bacteria, the metabolites, and everything.
Yeah, and I would say what she said, regenerative agriculture is a style of intensive farming that can leave the soil healthier and better off than without. So farming that can improve soil health.
It's about actionable results. Like, don't just hand somebody a bunch of numbers and go, here you go.
Right.
Like,
right.
And then they look at you and they go, so what am I supposed to do with this? Like,
exactly.
Does this mean anything? Does this tell me where I am in the scheme of things? It's about grabbing somebody by the hand. You have to succeed to turn things around. You have to succeed at the very first step. You have to. And everybody can take a first step. And then it's working through all the other steps. And just me handing you a bunch of numbers is not going to solve the problem. There's a whole lot of other things and all those synergistic effects and all those other things that come into play that are going to solve it.
I know there's a lot of talk about regenerative in grains or in meat, but the fresh section seems it's a whole different kind of ball game.
You know, we've been growing watermelons for 7 years. We've really never had to go to the same. I think we've grown watermelons in the same field one time. Everything
Wow.
else has been a totally new field that's never had watermelons before, and we should be able to support easily 10-year rotations where a field won't have watermelons again for 10 years. And
Wow.
so
That's
that
amazing.
to me, that's a really secret weapon that we have, and in terms of keeping all the micronutrients that watermelons like fresh, all the disease pathogens and things like that low, and optimizing flavor and quality every single year that we grow them.
This regenerative agriculture is.
Regenerative agriculture is life.
Wow. That's good.
You know, I used to talk about when I started out of the conventional world and started, cutting back on pesticides, and I was doing a lot of speaking at conventional conferences, and I got started being asked to speak at organic conferences because cover crops are pretty new there also. And I was shocked because I just viewed organic as awesome outside of tillage.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized, sadly, that organic and conventional agriculture are basically the same. They're both systems designed to kill. Both those farmers wake up every day. What do I have to kill today? Is it a bug? Is it a weed or what? And we need to start waking up every day thinking, what do I need to grow today?
Jordy, what is Regen Ag for you?
Well, again, that is a very loaded question, and I could say it depends, but that's just cliche. But I will start off with one of my mantras saying that a wise man knows nothing. So I refuse to label something because I don't think that Regen Ag is something that should be labeled. However, to me, Regen Ag means fostering a community which supports and encourages life. And not only does that community happen in the soil or on the plant, but it happens by encouraging a community that fosters life, whether it be from the microscopic to the macroscopic. That to me is Regen Ag, because we are supporting life. Now, Gail Fuller, he hit it right on the head when he said it's life, because he's spot on. But I think that it just needs to be expanded just a little bit more, just to include the community aspect, because you and I both know that none of this can happen all by doing it yourself. You need support. And the microbes, agriculture, it's all the same. It needs support. So by fostering that community of life and doing things that encourages life, I think that's a very broad spectrum definition of Regen Ag that could be supported by a lot of people.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that podcast as much as I did. I really enjoy chatting with amazing people that are doing fantastic things. I just can't help being enthusiastic for the future. And I hope that it gives you a sense of hope. Hope that we're always going to be able to cope with climate change, and we're always going to be able to grow enough nutritious food for everyone. And that agriculture is really going to be the answer to a lot of our problems. It is the solution. The future is bright, and we should all be hopeful. And more than anything, I hope I'll see you the next time. Bye for now.